Welcome back to Michael Coren Show. We're talking about Iran on this show, and it's halftime, so we're just talking about soccer. Reference there. It's halftime, so we reintroduce the panel. Ali Ghiassi, Secretary of the Iranian Canadian Lawyers Association, and you do look rather lawyer-like. You're probably expensive too, so I'm not going to go that way. Samira Mohyeddin, is that the right pronunciation, Mohyeddin? Yeah, good. Graduate student, University of Toronto, thank you for being here. Hossein Derakhshan, who's contributed to the BBC World Service and is the father of Iranian blogging. And Bahman Kalbasi, who's a student activist. Women in Iran, there is hypocrisy in the West, as billions and billions are made out of pornography and prostitution and depicting women in specific ways in our culture. We then look at other countries and say, oh, look at the way they behave. But it does seem that women in Iran are not treated with the equality, the way they're allowed to dress and behave. Are there full rights for women in Iran? Yet in Parliament and universities, we hear that there's representation.
Sure, there's lots of representation. 65% of the students in the universities are women, but so what? I mean, when you look at the labor market, that drops dramatically. And, I mean, no, they don't have full rights. I do not have any freedom of mobility when I go to Iran. I need to get permission in order to go, get a passport. I need my father or brothers or some, you can be elected to certain level of government. You can't become the president because there's a dispute over the interpretation of the word. People say it's male, others say, it can be interpreted differently. Mm-hmm. So, no, hijab is mandatory, which is the covering veil.
Right.
And, as far as I'm concerned, that one aspect, I mean, that veiling of women, despite what their religious background is, has become the hallmark of this government. You take that away, and there really isn't much left Islamic about the government. That's a visual signifier, as far as I'm concerned, that represents this regime. It was the first thing that was imposed, and it is the thing that has been the most constant, in terms of not changing. There are people who will push those barriers. I mean, in the beginning of the 80s, you had to totally cover yourself. Now when you go, women are showing a bit of hair. And that's the only thing the media picks up on. Oh, things are changing in Iran. Look, women are showing hair, or they're wearing nail polish. So these sort of superficialities are picked up and made grandiose. And, oh, the government's changing because, she's wearing pink nail polish.
We're not talking, though, about the Taliban here. We're not talking about
not
a sadistic oppression. We're talking about an interpretation of Islamic law.
We're talking, it's a certain interpretation, but so was the Taliban. I mean, the Taliban's Islam, as far as I'm concerned, is just as valid as anybody else's. It's just as valid as Iran's version of Islam, or just as valid as Saudi Arabia's. There isn't one type of Islam. There are Islams, as there are different types of Judaism or Christianity. So I wouldn't rule out or say that the Taliban was deranged or, I mean, they had a certain interpretation, and it's not that far off from the text. So,
but 65% of students are women.
In the universities.
That is impressive. That's open education in any subject?
No. It's not any subject.
Any subject
No, it's not.
Well, recently it was basically they removed it all. It was maybe military. It was the only thing but they let women to become police.
Police, yeah, that I know, but there are certain agricultural studies that women are not to engage in. There's mining, there's metallurgy, there's specific ththings that you cannot get degrees
women
in.
In the workforce, are women allowed to work outside of the home?
Oh, of course. Sure.
Well, you say that, but there are many Muslim countries where that isn't allowed.
I know, but again, this is another interpretation of Islam. I mean, women can work outside. Women are in all, when you go into the society, they are in all spheres of life. But there is a latent and, discrimination that goes on in terms of freedom of mobility, freedom of dress, freedom to be elected to all levels of government. That doesn't exist.
And the pay is certainly lower still.
Sure, but that's the same here. I mean, women don't make the same amount.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, what about the relationship between the Persian culture and the Arab world? Now, a shared religion to a certain extent. But Well, I'm absolutely candid. I've met Iranians who are very scornful of Arabs. They claim to have a superior culture. I'm not saying that's you here, but we're not Arabs. We're different. We are. And others told me that Iran has become, if you like, more Arabized. There's been a welcoming of Arab cultures being part of greater Islam. What is the relationship? Wars have been fought not that long ago between Iran and Arab countries. Is there a brotherhood now?
Well, I think Iran has always had that split personality. I mean, it's always been its own country. But there's the Islamic element of Iran. So Iranian politics over history, there's always the tension between the nationalism and the religious element. And many see the religious element as part of a past that has Arab elements to it. And the national element is what they would call the Persian element, the original. But, I think certainly there are some very important similarities between the two countries. But you ask any Iranian, you confuse any Iranian about being an Arab, and he or she would be the first to correct you. Much like calling a Croatian person a Serb. I think
that much.
Well, I think certainly, in fact, even more, because the languages are different. Arabic language is a Semitic language. Iranian language is Indo-European language. They come from different areas originally, and
but there's a certain common cause and a common religion. Whereas Serb and Croatian, there's a different religion, language.
It's the same religion, a different sect.
Yeah.
It's really
very,
well,
it's. I mean, she is.
It's a fundamental difference, and they will be the first to tell you that.
Right.
Yeah, well, you could see as the Catholics. I don't know if Catholics and Protestants have ever had the history of killing each other over this.
A little bit of that in Northern Ireland.
Well, yeah,
30 years war.
Well, I mean, in a broader picture of Catholic Protestants, but you see Sunnis and Shias are killing each other in Iraq today, and that's a divide. You see, right now, the biggest part of the civil war right in Iran, in Iraq, that is not being called civil war, is between the Shias and Sunnis. Yeah. So it is a very wide divide, and the main clashes between the Persian Empire and the Ottoman Empire was over the fact that they were Sunnis and we were Shias. So that always remained.
A bit more this when we come back. A few moments, we'll return. Michael Coren after these great commercials. We'll see you. Okay, don't go away.